Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, quite a few different styles, and I think it's fair to describe this brewery as one of the older and more established craft breweries in Sweden. They were certainly one of the first ones that I discovered when I moved over here back in 2015. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Hedemora, which is in Dalarna county, kind of to the northwest of Stockholm, quite a famous county in terms of skiing and things like that, and we're going to return to Oppigårds Bryggeri. So this beer is quite different from the ones we've had from them before. This one is called Raspberry Sour. It comes in at 4.5% ABV, and this one is a Berliner Weisse. So this is the very first sour beer that these guys have released through Systembolaget. I'm not sure if it's the first one that they've done ever. I think there might have been some other ones that have gone around bars and things like that, but certainly it is the first sour beer that they've released through Systembolaget here in Sweden. So yeah, very, very curious to see how this one turns out. Cool to see that such an established brewery is still experimenting quite a lot, and hopefully we see some more sour beers from these guys in the future. But yeah, curious to see how it turns out. Hopefully it's an interesting beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So let's get cracking with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Oppigårds Bryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more added onto that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to it all the time because I get so many Swedish beers to review. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Oppigårds Bryggeri then, onto my brewery notes. So, as I've mentioned to you already, Oppigårds Bryggeri are based in Hedemora, which is in Dalarna county to the northwest of Stockholm and quite close to Borlänge and Falun as well. Falun, of course, the home of Sabaton, one of Sweden's greatest inventions. But the company is, as I say, one of the older craft breweries here in Sweden, founded back in 2003. But the brewery itself sits on the 250-year-old Falkström family farm, and the original building was in a small wooden building which was apparently constructed back in 1896, and this space was originally used for flax dressing and also for the great-grandfather's metalsmithing business. But all of the beers were originally brewed in this old building, but they also added a new kind of malt house to this as well, and these days they've got a very new and shiny purpose-built brewery actually. But the brewery itself, as I say, was founded back in 2003 by Björn Falkström, and he wanted to revive the family farm, but he also wanted to revive the tradition of the Swedish farmhouse ales. Now these beers were the norm in Sweden until you had all the kind of generic mass-produced lagers coming in the 1800s, but this made the farmhouse beers relatively unprofitable and they just kind of disappeared over time. But this brewery became very popular, and it's allowed the Falkström family to continue making their living on the farm as they've done since the 1700s. In the first year they produced only around 8,000 litres of beer and sold it locally, but in these days they're producing well over 1 million litres of beer per year. They've got a new Italian brew kit in their brewery, and they've got a theoretical capacity of 2.5 million litres of beer per year, which is very impressive. When they first set up their new brewery, they had quite a few teething problems with the new Italian brew kit they had. It took them a couple of months actually to get that going, from what I understand, but these days it's running very well, and they're putting out quite a few different beers actually. So yeah, as of April 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 110 different kinds of beer. You know, mainly it's kind of old school sort of West Coasty type beers, if you like their Golden Ale is very nice, the Amarillo's a nice one as well. Probably my favourite beers I've had from these guys would be the Turbo IPA and the Turbo Stout actually. I really like those, but the New Sweden IPA is a little bit of a classic these days too. But they have got an experimental series of New England IPAs that they do. You saw me review one of those recently, the Frag, and that was very good. But yeah, it's cool to see that these guys are going to have a little go at sours now as well. Recently they released a few beers like the Hedemora Helles and Dunkel and things like that, actually, which I thought was those were both very nice. But I lost one of those videos because the memory card corrupted, which I was annoyed about. But what can you do? What can you do? That happens sometimes. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Oppigårds Bryggeri for the moment. Like I say, one of the older and more established craft breweries here in Sweden, and definitely one that you should check out if you get the chance. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on. Let's have a little look at this. So artwork, as you can see, is a little bit different compared to some of the other ones. The round all is a little bit more subtle, if you like, but this sort of round all thing that you have behind Oppigårds, or behind the name of the beer, I should say, is the sort of, this is the Oppigårds trademark. There you can see Oppigårds Bryggeri. They have kind of maintained this logo throughout their existence, but they've just altered it a little bit, like fairly recently, within the last year or two. They've changed the format of the text. They've changed their bottle caps as well. They used to have a star on them. But yeah, a little bit more kind of modern, if you like. So yeah, they've kind of undergone a slight facelift in recent times. But yeah, it tells you on the back here. So a raspberry sour, it contains organic wheat and Pilsner malt. So Berliner Weisse har sitt ursprung i Berlin under 1600-talet. So yeah, Berliner Weisse has its roots in Berlin during the 1600s. It öl som får sin syrliga karaktär med hjälp från lactobacterier. So yeah, it's a beer that has its sour character with the help of lactobacillus, basically. Vår raspberry sour är ett syrlig ölbrygg med stora mängder hela hallon. So our raspberry sour is a sour beer brewed with large quantities, hela hallon. So I don't know what the purpose of hela is in there grammatically. I should look that up. That's good for my Swedish training. But yeah, basically it's saying it's brewed completely and only with massive amounts of raspberries. So yeah, I assume the raspberries in Dalarna will be pretty good. But yeah, nicely presented, this one, as we always get. 330ml bottle. I actually can't remember what I paid for this one, but this was released as part of the Tillfällig temporary assortment, I think, at the end of March. I think it was released at the end of March, this one. So I've had this one in the fridge for a little while, actually. But yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. A 4.5% raspberry Berliner Weisse. Very curious to see what this has in store for us. So let's have a little look at this. There we are. Oh, this looks very nice, actually. Curious to see what effect Pilsner malt has. And well, there's not a lot of sediment in that either, which is good. But yeah, let me just line that up again so that my OCD is happy, and there we go. So I'm curious, as I say, to see what effect the Pilsner malt has in this one. But I have to say, this is one of the more unusual Berliner Weisses that I've seen recently. Look at the brightness on that. That's a lovely looking beer. You can see that when the beer poured, it did have a little bit of a head on it, maybe like, you know, a quarter of a finger or something like that. But yeah, not a lot from this beer in terms of the head and things like that. It looks, you know, there's pretty much nothing left there, just a little bit of foam around the edge of the glass. But yeah, if we shine the light through this one, it is pretty damn hazy, and, you know, to be honest, you would expect that from a Berliner Weisse. So as you can see, lovely sort of candy apple pinky colour out of this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the surface there, but not a lot of visible carbonation, and you can see that it is pretty damn hazy. So remember, when it comes to the colour of your beers, it depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil, and then any adjuncts or barrel aging that you do. And obviously when it comes to Berliner Weisses, the biggest factor, of course, will be those different adjuncts. So the big kind of candy pink sort of colour that you're getting out of this one will be due to those lovely raspberries in there. But yeah, the haze on the beer will of course be down to the wheat, and to an extent the yeast as well actually will play a role in that. But yeah, I think there will be quite a lot of wheat in this one by the looks of it. But as I say, I'm very curious to see what effect the Pilsner malt has on it. They do love a bit of Pilsner malt at Oppigårds Bryggeri. But yeah, certainly a lovely looking beer, this one. Not out of the realms of possibility for a Berliner Weisse, but it looks very, very bright actually. So yeah, surprised at the colour of this one a little bit. Just the sheer brightness of it, but otherwise I'm not too surprised actually at at how this beer appears, to be honest with you. You would expect a lovely kind of pink colour like this out of a Berliner Weisse. And as I've said previously as well, these beers tend to be remarkably straight shooting in their flavour profiles and their aromas and things like this, but that doesn't take away anything from them. You know, they can be lovely, lovely beers, these. But yeah, nothing surprising about the appearance for a Berliner Weisse. Like I say, let's have a look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. Yeah. That's a lovely smelling beer, that, absolutely. Yeah. So, the aroma of this beer is lovely. I mean, it's kind of what you'd expect. It's like a sort of old school Berliner Weisse in a way, and that's one of the things I really like about Oppigårds is their beers in a lot of ways, apart from obviously the New England IPAs and things, they've got really nice just old school beers that always give you this little kind of nostalgic effect, I would say, and that's exactly what I get from this one. Because a lot of the sours and things you get these days are like extremely, extremely sweet, whereas this one I think takes you back to what a Berliner Weisse kind of was originally, if that makes sense. So yeah, this is a lovely, lovely smelling beer. And as I said earlier, it's got quite a straightforward, it does have quite a straightforward kind of nose on it and things like that. And I think the flavour profile will be pretty straightforward as well, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be a good beer. Sometimes simplicity is best, of course. But straight away with this beer, you can smell that lovely, kind of big, white bready, wheaty backbone to it. Yeah. Lovely big kind of smooth backbone in there. So yeah, lots of white bread in there. You can smell a little bit of bread crust as well. You do get a little bit of that kind of yogurty petit filou kind of thing out of this beer as well. It always reminds me of the Munch Bunch yogurts. These Berliner Weisses always remind me of those Munch Bunch yogurts that my mum used to get me from a lunchbox when I was going to school. I always loved a bit of Munch Bunch yogurt. Yeah. Yeah, lovely smelling beer, absolutely. Just awesome, love it. But yeah, on top of that sort of yogurty thing, you can smell, there is a wee tiny hint of a slightly biscuity note, which I wonder if that's from the Pilsner malt. I do get just a little bit of a kind of biscuity Pilsnery note out of this one, which is quite interesting. You wouldn't expect that in a Berliner Weisse normally, but it's quite an interesting touch. But yeah, as I say, smooth, white bready backbone, a little bit of bread crust in there, some nice yogurty petit filou type things coming out of it, and then you've also got some as I say, little bits of sweet biscuity, little bits of sweet biscuity Pilsner malty kind of things out of it as well. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this beer is really nice actually. It suits me, it suits very, very nicely. So yeah, this beer, I'm just checking the bottle because it smells very, very smooth. So this one, it actually doesn't say anything about containing hops, and I have to admit I notice that this is a thing in seems to be a thing in Scandinavia actually, that they don't really add hops into sour beers. I've commented on this in videos before. Back home in Scotland we have a brewery called Vault City, and they always put hops in their sour beers. And I think it just adds a little bit of depth to flavour, but I've not seen too many breweries in Scandinavia that add hops into these sour beers actually. So I mean, the likes of Brewski, Duck Pond, Morgendagens, I'm trying to think who else, you know, all these kind of well-known sour breweries here in Sweden don't tend to do it, and it seems that Oppigårds haven't done that as well. But I think the original German ones, the Berliner Kindles and stuff like that, I think they do put a bit of hop in these beers, but I think they tend to put slightly older hops in them so the bitterness doesn't take away from the sourness in the beer. So maybe they have taken a few of the sort of modern Berliner Weisse brewing principles out of this actually, which is certainly interesting. So yeah, you do, in fairness, and this is one of the things, you do always get a little bit of a kind of placebo with these beers in a sense, because you still get a little bit of a kind of green out of them too, which is interesting. But yeah, for me, I do get a teeny little bit of a sort of earthy note out of it. There is a wee bit of a kind of floral note and some grassiness. I'd say that if there is a green component to this beer, it's mainly grassy rather than anything else. But you've got a lovely, big, juicy raspberry note out of this one. There is a wee bit of sharpness in there. I mean, you can smell a little bit of tartness from the raspberries, but overall, they come across as being quite nice and just wet and juicy in a sense, actually. So yeah, I mean, the aroma profile. The aroma profile of this one is very, very nice, but yeah, it's definitely worth just taking a little bit of time to ponder that over, because it's very attractive aroma. I love these I love doing Berliner Weisse and Goza reviews, actually, because they're very just straight shooting beers. They're not as complex as some other things, but they always work out pretty nicely. But yeah, take a bit of time to ponder that aroma over, as I said, but we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we get on. So yeah, this one is the Raspberry Sour, a 4.5% Berliner Weisse from Oppigårds Bryggeri in Hedemora in Dalarna County here in Sweden. The first sour beer that they've released through Systembolaget. So let's get stuck in and see how we go with this. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that's pretty solid, actually. It's a bit more tart on the flavour than the aroma would have you believe. But yeah, this is a properly kind of old school Berliner Weisse in a way, this one. It's not like the big kind of creamy, sweet sort of things that a lot of breweries are doing these days. This one is a little bit more old school, so well done to Oppigårds for kind of sticking to that kind of, what I call the sort of nostalgia train, if you like. I like how they do these beers that are just a little bit more old school in a sense. But yeah, this beer is a solid effort as their first sour beer. Well, their first sour release, I guess we should say, through Systembolaget. I'm curious to see what other ones they would come out with. A cloudberry sour would be interesting, but yeah. So yeah, it's a lovely, it is just a lovely flavour, this one. I think it, again, very straight shooting, but it does the business. So yeah, let's break down the flavour of this one for you and describe it a little bit more. So straight away, across the middle of the palate with this one, you get a nice kind of smooth, how do you say, you do get a nice kind of smooth white bready quality that just goes right across the middle of your palate there, and it does thicken up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste as well. But yeah, lovely kind of smooth, wheaty, white bready element to this one. I think that works very, very well. Yeah, you can feel it. The further you go into the aftertaste with this one, you can feel there's a little bit of a sort of bread crusty element just pushing its way out of the beer, which I can certainly appreciate. But yeah, the middle third of your palate on this one is very, very straight shooting. At the back of that middle third of your palate, you can feel a little touch of crispness from the Pilsner malt, and you do get a wee bit of biscuity note right in the very centre of the middle of your palate. You definitely get a wee touch of that. So that's interesting as well. But you know, on top of the kind of wheaty, the soft white bready note, you get a kind of yogurty element out of it. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that yogurty petit filou kind of thing coming out of the beer. But not too much, as I say. This one is a little bit more of it's a less creamy Berliner Weisse, this one, and a little bit more sort of old school in a sense. But in the dead centre of your palate, you will get a little bit of that sweet sort of biscuity. You do get a little bit of that sweet sort of biscuity and kind of pilsnery type malt out of it. And you can feel that as you go further out towards the extremities of your palate, it does get just a little touch more sort of grainy in a sense. So I like how that goes together, absolutely. So yeah, this certainly goes together very, very nicely. So yeah, the malty and yeasty side of this beer is pretty solid actually. So yeah, on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel there is a little bit of a kind of more, you can feel a little bit more of a kind of yeasty build up there. There is a little bit of a kind of bread crusty element to this one too. And then on the back third of your palate, you can feel there is a more, you can feel some of the smoother elements of the wheat as well. And on top of this, you get some of the kind of more airy, yeasty type flavours as well, which is quite interesting. So yeah, the back third of your palate is just very, very smooth and straight up wheat. You don't have so much of that kind of yogurty element sitting on top of the back, on top of the back third of your palate. The yogurty kind of things is in the middle third of your palate. So I like how that goes together. But on the green side of things, on the edge of your palate where you would normally get the hoppy flavours, there is a wee bit of a kind of hoppy placebo, if you like. There's a little touch of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit more herbal, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a it does get a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic in a sense, and round the front curve of the tongue there's a wee bit of a lighter grassiness, but at the same time those flavours are very smooth. So again, that's an indicator that there's not hops in this one. So yeah, you don't really get a bitterness out of this beer, which would indicate no hops. So yeah, that's an interesting point for sure. But yeah, on the the fruity side of things, then we'll look at the kind of fruity and sour side of the beer now. The front third of your palate, basically. On that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of a kind of yeasty build up again there, a little bit of a kind of grainy element, and then the base of that front third of your palate is a smooth sort of kind of white bready, smooth wheaty kind of thing there too. But yeah, I think that works, that kind of suits the fruity side of the beer quite nicely. But the impact of this beer is quite interesting because you get the sourness coming in just behind that very tip of your tongue there. It's got a little bit of sharpness, but then as you move further, back, that, I mean, for me with sour beers, it's all about the transition they make when they come in sharp, and it's just the way they kind of smoothen out and juicing up a little bit. That's for me what makes a good sour beer, if it can pull that transition off nicely. And this one does. When it comes in, it's got a little bit of a sharp sour impact, but then the raspberries in this are very kind of juicy, if you like. Scottish raspberries are a little bit sharper and more tart than this, I would say, but I think I've said this in Swedish raspberry beers before. So it's always interesting to think about that, like fruits from different countries and things like this. They always taste a bit different, actually. You know, as I've said before, in you'd be very hard pressed to find imperial stouts that are thicker than Scandinavians anywhere in the world. But I think, in fairness, with raspberries, I think you'd be pushed to find tartar raspberries than Scottish ones anywhere in the world. But who knows? It's always interesting to think about these things. But yeah, it does have a nice little bit of tartness behind the that front tip of your tongue. Then it comes in, it's got a wee bit of impact, then the raspberry, the smooth, sweet, juicy raspberries just roll their way back across that kind of front third of your palate there. So I really like how all of that pieces together in this one. I think it's got a very, very nice it has a very nice just juiciness to it, which works very, very well. So yeah, it is all about the raspberries. Of course, you get a few undertones of, a light kind of figgy note, a bit of a candied strawberry. You get a few little things like this, but yeah, all about the raspberries. You always get a few of these fruity undertones with the beer. But yeah, this is a lovely kind of old school Berliner Weisse, this one. It's not the big kind of creamy sweet thing that you're going to get from some of the other Swedish brews. This one's properly old school, and it's a little bit of a nice change of pace, in honesty. So yeah, I think that covers the flavour profile of this beer pretty extensively, to be honest. So let's round off with the mouthfeel. So overall, I would say this beer, You know, it's kind of, you know, it's almost right in the middle of the spectrum actually. It feels very, very clean, and I mean, you often get this with Swedish beers, of course. They feel very clean because of the quality of the water. So that's one thing. But yeah, it has that lovely kind of clean, sort of crisp mouthfeel that you're going to get from the high quality water they've got up there in Dalarna. So yeah, I've got a lovely clean element to this one. It does have a wee bit of it. It's got a big smoothness to it. I wouldn't describe it as creamy, but there's a big smoothness to this beer. Then you've got a really juicy, fruity kind of element out of it as well. So I really like how all of this this pieces together. So yeah, the mouthfeel of this one kind of suits it. Very clean and crisp as you'd expect from a Dalarna beer, but it's got a nice kind of smoothness as you would expect from an old school Berliner Weisse. So like I said, malt base in this beer is very, very smooth. There's a wee bit of crispness and a little bit of sweetness in there as well. You've got a little touch of hoppy character to this one too, which I think is really interesting. You still get a little bit of that kind of green quality to it, even though it doesn't have hops in it. That's probably a better way to word it than what I said a second ago. But yeah, you do get a little bit of green character out of this one. I think there must be about 4 or 5 IBUs to this beer. I think it's very difficult to get 0 IBUs in a beer, in honesty. At least you always get the impression of that. But good little bit of sharp impact on it. Some nice juicy sharp fruity elements out of it as well. But yeah, it does the business. It's a solid Berliner Weisse, this one. And if this is their first go at one, then I think that's pretty impressive. So I'm curious to see what they do with this style moving forward, actually. I'd be curious to see them try a Gose, things like this as well, to try a few Goses and stuff like that and see what other berries they've got. A cloudberry Berliner Weisse would be pretty good. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the Raspberry Sour 4.5% Berliner Weisse from Oppigårds Bryggeri in Hedemora in Dalarna County here in Sweden. Awesome to see these guys having a go at some sour beers after quite a long time, after about 16 years of existence it is now. But no, actually it's longer than that, isn't it? If it's 2003 that the brewery was founded, then that's going to be 18 years. Yeah, 18 years. I'm trying to remember. I had, they did some, it was Dugis that had their 15th anniversary recently. I'm thinking wrong. Yeah, these guys did a 15th anniversary beer with one of the other breweries. It might have been Närke. Not that long ago. Kagen Turbo Stout or something like this it was called. Yeah, I remember that. I remember having their 15th anniversary beer. Losing track of time, guys. That always happens when you study physics, because everything's just so old. You don't care so much about time. But yeah, lovely beer, this one. Glad I got the chance to review it for you, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on this one as well. Brain's a little bit tired today from doing more programming and things like that. That's one of the reasons why my videos are always so long. Yeah, brain is always tired from work. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Oppigårds Bryggeri as well. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, and I'll see you guys again soon. Slange, skull, cheers, and make sure you check out Oppigårds Bryggeri. This one, the Raspberry Sour 4.5% Berliner Weisse from Oppigårds in Hedemora, Dalarna here in Sweden. Slange, skull, cheers.